Hi everyone, this is Justine Rhodes, your host for Mentally a Badass. This podcast is dedicated to breaking the boundaries surrounding the mental health conversation. The stories you'll hear on this podcast are real, raw, and relatable, and come from people from different backgrounds because we believe mental health is global and does not discriminate. Welcome to the unfiltered side of the internet. Hey there, listeners. Just a heads up, this episode might dive into some heavy stuff like rape, sexual assault, suicide, violence, or drugs. We want you to know that these are tough topics and it's totally okay to skip this one if you're not up for it. Remember, we're not experts, we're just here to share stories and start conversations. If you or someone you know needs help, reach out to a professional or call a helpline. Take care of yourselves and each other. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine and I have an old friend of mine named Abe. We met in high school. He is from New Jersey. And today, as you probably read on the title, we are going to be talking about gaslighting and depression, which is super important, especially learning about what gaslighting means. A lot of people may not know what that means. So a little background on him. We met in high school. And he is right now a nurse for the last 10 years. So yeah, he's a cool guy. We're going to talk about his depression story. We're going to be talking about his hospitalization story. And this whole episode is going to be very educational and also inspiring. So welcome to the podcast, Abe.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, I've been wanting to have you on this podcast for literally over a year. Did you know that?
No.
No, I'm not even lying to you. Like, I've been wanting you on this podcast for so long, and I just never slid into your DMs. For real, I was like, okay, I want to talk about his story, but I don't know for sure if he wants to publicize his story. And I also knew you live in Florida, but I didn't know what part. And I was like, if he's close enough, maybe he can come over. Your sister gave me the motivation to do that.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad finally get to do this.
Of course. And if you guys are wondering who his sister is, her sister was actually on as a guest on the podcast. Rosa Martinez, known as Raina Mar. She's the one who wrote the song about depression. After you listen to this episode, of course, I'll put the link to her episode if you want to listen to hers. But today we're going to be focusing on Abe. We're going to be talking about, as I said, depression and gaslighting. So the first question I have for you to just, get this going is, when were you diagnosed with depression?
Officially, depression started, I was 15, 16, around there.
Me too. Relatable.
Yeah. It was a very critical age. A lot of stuff going on. And, it took a while to figure it out. But once I met with somebody, a pediatric psychiatrist and psychologist, they pretty much told me I had what's called manic depression, where I was manifesting multiple behaviors, bipolar depression, everything kind of just mixed in, where I would be very, very high and let's clean the house and let's go out and let's do whatever. And then 5 days later, you just feel like dying. It's the best way I can describe it.
Yes. I'm literally the exact same way. I didn't realize how much in common we have with our mental health journey.
Yeah, it's not easy, but you learn from it. That's one thing you do, is you learn from it. So
yeah. Oh my gosh, for real. So question, were you diagnosed with bipolar, officially?
The bipolar was more focused after I started medication. So I started on lithium, which, required blood work every 2 weeks and everything like that. And it was just to balance out my levels, but it was more because I was manic. So they wanted to kind of control the manic stage and then kind of progress. But with psych meds, there's always side effects, and one thing led to another. I was then bipolar, then I was schizophrenic because certain meds make you see things, hallucinate, and, to get your endorphins up and everything, it kind of just masks other things, and then it manifests other things. I went through maybe 16 different medications before I was like, you know what, let me just stop.
16? Oh my God.
Yeah, about 16 different meds and calibrations and, changing doses and everything. It's been a crazy journey.
Yeah, that sounds A lot. I'm trying to think of how many I've been on. Right now I'm on Wellbutrin and Lamictal.
That was my
And
last one. Wellbutrin.
I like Wellbutrin. Now, what was your feedback on Wellbutrin?
The only thing I liked about it is that it helped me lose weight before I moved here down to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess it sped up your metabolism because it wants you to be
Yeah.
happy, 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 and alert all the time. But it was a little too much for me. It was a little too much for me, but it
That actually
helped
makes
for a
total
while.
sense. I was
Yeah.
told that is because of the lack of appetite. It should show you're not like eating as much. That's what I was
Hmm.
told. And
Yes.
then, yeah. And then, well, my eating habits has always been off, and I still today do not know. At one point in 2017, I thought I was like having an eating disorder, and I was freaking out because because at that time I was doing a lot of YouTube. So I can see myself, I look at myself, and I'm like, why am I seeing bone? I
Yeah.
wasn't on any meds at that time either. And that was the same year actually was hospitalized with a panic attack. So my mental health was probably insane at that time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I was just curious myself. So let's see, I was on Abilify. I was on, okay, well, Wellbutrin. I was on Seroquel,
Hmm.
which is a depression one. That one made me gain a lot of weight.
Hmm. Yep.
And maybe like, let's say 4 or 5. I don't think too much. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. You mentioned that you were hospitalized. When were you hospitalized?
So I believe my first hospitalization was the beginning of March 2016, I want to say,
Mm.
around there. Actually, I'm sorry, way back. I was in high school.
Yeah,
Because I
I was
remember
gonna say
missing a good portion of
that.
high school. That was the second time I was hospitalized. First time was, I want to say it was 2011, March of
Mm-hmm.
2011. Because it was my junior year.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the beginning of March, I remember, and it was I forgot it was I remember it was like really really cold, and it was interesting because the way it started and the way I got help in terms of about hospitalization and how to be treated for something I didn't myself understand was I had sent a text message to who I thought was my best friend at the time. I thought I sent it to them, but I ended up sending it to somebody else. I was in the ambulance corps. I started volunteering as an what do you call it, EMT, like volunteer,
Mm-hmm.
back in Little Ferry during that time. And so I was thinking, there's like a lake back there. It looks like a plant, kind of almost. And I remember it being frozen. I remember a fence being broken. So you can gain access to the lake, and just me walking around. And I was like, you know what? What if I just jumped and just never resurfaced? And all this just in a split of a second, just going through my mind. And I had reached out to somebody just saying, this is the end, I don't know what to do anymore. It happened to be my best friend at the time who also volunteered with me. They immediately called me and they found me, just walking around, and I didn't even realize it. And they were like, what's going on? So two of my squad mates came, and one of them happened to be hospitalized before, so she understood the whole process. So I feel like it was a blessing in disguise that happened, because they were able to guide me and say, "Hey, you need to be seen. There's something more that you need to follow up with, because that's not okay." At the end of the day, when you're that low and you're thinking about doing it, and it gets to that point where it's do or die. But yeah, Bergen Regional was my first time. I spent nearly 3 weeks there, and the only reason why I was let go early was because it was going to be my 17th birthday. So they were like, you know what, go out for your birthday and make sure everything would be good. But it wasn't good for a while. First time was the roughest because I didn't understand. I didn't want to eat. I mean, at one point they said I lost over 25 pounds, and they were gonna have to send me to the ER. I mean, it was just a bad first encounter with the hospital. I'm not gonna lie. So, but yeah, it's
Yeah, I hear a lot of things about being like in a mental hospital. I hear a lot of negative things about it. And then also just hearing your story, it sounds a little similar to your sisters. You guys seriously have like guardian angels, I believe. I really truly believe in that.
yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as, of course, assuming you know your sister's story, but when she was talking about it and she told me her story, I was like, I was so happy that couple, came to that roof and pretty much talked her out of it because I would have been devastated, of course. You would, of course.
Yeah.
And so I really believe you guys. Just with that happening, it just shows like, okay, no, it's not your time to leave. You have like a purpose. And
Mm-hmm.
you with your nursing, I mean, that's a huge purpose, very huge purpose. And your sister with her music, it touches a lot of people's souls, and it's just like mind blowing to me. Which I'm telling her, not telling her, I'm telling TikTok to make her viral. It's like for
Yeah.
real, like it gets me so mad. Like I'm, no, I actually get so mad about this. I'm just like, she's so talented, and come on, algorithm, do your thing.
AI, let's go.
For real, I was like, what is going on here? So the second time, wait, how many times were you hospitalized?
3 times total.
Let's talk about your most recent one. When was your recent?
Oh my gosh, that was Hackensack. I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to say it was 2000. That was the one around 2015, 2016.
Okay.
That was my last one. And basically was going through a really big low. I had stopped taking, I think it was Seroquel and Zoloft for a while. Like 3 months prior, I had stopped it. Everything was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, whatever. I was in college already, first year of college, second year around there. And, just it was a high and low. It was like seasonal depression because that affects me a lot, especially winter. And it just got to that point where I was like, you know what? Let me just start chugging some Four Locos and see what's in my parents' medicine cabinet. And one thing led to another, and I pretty much almost died. I mean, I had taken everything I could think of, my dad's blood pressure meds, different things. Like I didn't even know and remember exactly what I took, but it landed me in the hospital, of course. And that was probably the worst one because it's like I've been through it already multiple times, and that third time it was like, you know what, I'm tired and I can't keep pleasing people and putting on a smile and pleasing others when I myself am feel like death inside. It's just you feel nothing at all. You feel like you're a burden. You're absolute crap. You know.
Yeah.
And it was very, my best friend is the one who found me. At the time, he's no longer my best friend for good reasons. But he found me, and and thank God for that and everything. But it left a big impression because it was like, you know what, you need to decide. Third time's a charm. You need to really decide if you really want to be here or you don't. And it was interesting. It was pretty interesting. So,
Yeah.
but
When you said Four Loko, I was just thinking about my Four Loko experience at first. I was like, oh gosh, Four Loko.
ugh,
I was thinking when
yeah.
you were saying Four Loko and then the medication, I was like, I'm like, oh goodness, God. No. Well, I'm glad, you feel that your attempts.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for that. So, and this happened in New Jersey, and you've lived in Florida. How long have you lived in Florida?
Since January 7th of 2020, so 4 years, right before the pandemic.
Oh, I don't know why I thought you
Yeah.
were here longer. Okay. Were you in Miami first?
No, I would always come down to Miami to see my family because most of them are down there.
Oh.
So I came like every year. Yeah. But
Oh.
living here, I moved to Port St. Lucie in January 7th, 2020.
Okay. Wait, question for you. I have an ambulance passing me. I live by a fire station. Okay.
Oh, that
My
makes sense.
memory's absolutely horrible. So,
Fine.
I'm sorry in advance.
You're good.
Um, were you with Rosa when we went to Disney?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you got us the hookup. It was probably my best trip to Disney, to be honest.
I was trying to remember because we don't have any photos together, so that's why
I,
I was thinking.
Yeah, we
Because
do. It's just very few because that's when we went to like around the world and we actually took
oh,
a
it was
picture
so much
together in
fun.
front of Japan. It was fun. It was cool.
Yes, yes, because I was
Thanks to
like,
you, of
I,
course.
oh goodness, I wish I can still do that. I don't work for Disney
Oh,
anymore, but I
yeah.
wish yeah, I used to be people's Disney sugar mama. That's what
Yes.
Kelly called
Yeah.
me, actually. Kelly, she called me her sugar mama.
my gosh, Kelly, yeah, I forgot about her. Yeah. Makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so let's transition into gaslighting. Some people don't know what gaslighting means. Can you define that for me?
Yes. So, in my opinion, and by definition, for me, it's pretty much like a psychological abuse on somebody where, for example, you think you saw something or you're feeling some type of way, and they pretty much make an excuse as to, it's your fault that you're in this predicament. It's your fault that you are feeling the way you are feeling, and you didn't do enough or you didn't try hard enough. It's pretty much just making you feel more crazier than you think you are, which is a horrible feeling in itself. But something that I see a lot and still experience on a day to day basis. I'm sure a lot of people as well, you know, feel the same way. But yeah, it's not a fun thing to be a victim of. It's definitely something that just you question yourself. You're like, am I really insane? Am I really feeling this way? Is it all in my
Mm-hmm.
head or is this actual manifestation? It's a
Yeah, it
very
makes you question your
complex.
sanity.
Exactly. It's a very complex feeling to
Yeah,
understand.
for real. I've never even like heard the word gaslight until I heard an Bear song called Gaslight. I like honestly, like I've never even heard the term. Is that like
Yeah.
I don't think I have a degree in psychology too. So I'm like, how
Oh,
have I yeah, I'm like, how have I never heard this unless it's like it was a definition and it's just little things that I don't remember?
I feel like it's a street
Possibly.
term. It's one of those like urban dictionary terms. You know what I mean? Like it's
Oh,
not
okay,
something
that
that's
makes
like
sense.
medical. It's more of
Oh,
like,
okay.
yeah, it's like a
That
street term, I
totally makes
guess.
sense. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, that actually makes a lot of sense. And I was like, how do I not know what this means? I mean, the definition of it, I totally get what that means.
Hmm.
And then when I think about it, like I listened to that song and I was like, yep, and I've been through that. I'm like thinking of something right now actually that I was like gaslight. I've like so many times. Like, for example, when you think someone's like talking to somebody else and then they're like, no. And then you guys break up and then like a week later.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's like, so I was like, okay, I was gaslighted a lot and did not realize it. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I remember that time. And then, oh my God, I feel like how many times has this happened to me? My goodness. I gotta think. Oh my gosh. Like, let's see. This one wasn't, oh my God, stories. But I'm not gonna talk about it here because you know the people. And we don't want to be talking shit. But I'll probably tell you after.
I got you. I got you.
Okay, moving on. Do you have? I just like already told you like a little snippet of my story. That was the relationship basis. You told me off recording that you were gaslighted a lot by family. So let's talk about Hispanic family because that's a really good topic.
Yes. Well, as being in a Cuban culture, as you are as well, you can understand that there are certain things that we don't understand or that we want to kind of mask because we're very, as a whole, not just saying every Cuban or every Hispanic is the same way, but the general consensus is everything is spiritual and everything can be solved by praying or going to church or doing what needs to be done to correct whatever you're feeling or and stemming in gender like a gender issue as well, being a male in a Hispanic family, you are expected to be the one who carries the family. You are expected to be a man. You are walk like a man, talk like a man, feel like a man. You're not allowed to show emotions. Emotions are weak, are a sign of weakness essentially. So dealing with that in and itself was very hard growing up. I remember my grandfather saying, men don't cry, and I mean, I'm like, dude, I'm 7, like, I'm gonna cry.
You're a
But
kid.
right, I'm a child. But as I grew older and going into 15, 16, that whole high school, like, what am I doing here? What's going on? Why am I here? That whole thing kind of just exploded, and I didn't really have an outlet because being in that culture kind of made me mask a lot of what I felt, a lot of my viewpoints. And when depression really, sunk its teeth in, it was very hard to talk with my family. especially my parents, grandparents, they thought, the devil's getting you, the devil's in your head, let's pray for you, let's do this, let's do that, with not really understanding what depression is, and how it manifests differently in different people.
Yeah.
So it's definitely hard to talk about. And again, they're like, you're a man, you gotta shake it off. It's all in your head. You watch too many scary movies. You're listening to emo music, which I'm still I have an emo heart to this day. I'm still listening to my Coheed and Cambria and whatchamacallit. Oh my gosh, I'm already forgetting some of the bands. Don't turn 30, people. Your
Hey,
memory
I
just
mean,
kind of
I
goes
forgot
old.
we hung out at Disney like a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. That's true.
okay, okay. I still can't get over that.
But it was I was just that was me growing up. It was just not being understood, not being heard, and having to really try to justify what I'm feeling without any justification. There was no reason for, we all grow up and we all have depression and we all have dislikes and likes and all that other stuff. But it was very hard in my case because I didn't know where it was coming from. And so trying to explain that to family members, even to friends who didn't really relate, was very difficult. I remember.
Yeah, and just I'm gonna tell you what I got from pretty much everything you said, and I can completely relate to you. I mean, I didn't have parents that said that the devil was in me, so I can't relate to that part. But I do relate to when talking about mental health, it was seen as like, oh, this is like not a real thing, or they would feel uncomfortable talking about it. That would be a huge thing. And not just them too, just also like in our high school as well, people, I mean, there's some people that would just ignore me, think I'm too emotional or annoying and things like that. And then also, you and I, we're both from New Jersey. And I feel like New Jersey people are a lot more tough or whatever. Like that whole like tough persona, if you know what I mean. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And like they're just not as understanding. And another thing too, I remember when I was around that age as well, because I was diagnosed with depression around the same age as you. And I remember not wondering, like, what is wrong with me? Like, that was like the big thing, like, what is wrong with me? And then when in the family, no one would talk about mental health, I was like, and that's where I was like starting to get suicidal and stuff. I'm like, you know what I mean? I feel like I didn't belong. So I was like, what am I
Yeah.
like? I'm like a waste, So that's what the thoughts I had like manifested up until like senior year. I never attempted, but I would like self harm a lot. So I mean, I could have if my mom didn't find in time like me doing those behaviors. So thankfully she found me. But yeah, I completely like it. I feel like it's like a mix. It's like a Jersey thing, the Hispanic culture, because also like where we grew up is a huge Hispanic culture around. So that's another thing too. And so another thing, when we didn't know what was wrong with us, right? And then as we're getting older, like just me, like first with my degree, second, since I do mentally a badass, I'm always learning something new every single day. I'm always talking to people on this podcast who are also like professionals in the actual industry. So I learn a lot. And everything always routes back to childhood trauma. So even if your like parents didn't mean to do anything, because they do the best that they can do. Like there's stuff that like the way like my mother treated me, and she's very well around aware of that. So I can talk about this here. And we've had like conversations about stuff that she did that caused me to feel, XYZ and such. But she didn't know better, and she didn't realize the kind of effects it had on me, and it goes on to your core beliefs. So when you were depressed and such, did you try to? So I think my question is, you had these bad thoughts, right? What kind of thoughts were there? Were there like thoughts of feeling like worthless or hopeless, or you know what I mean? Like I'm just trying to kind of understand your thought
It
process.
was You're in the ballpark. It pretty much kind of was like, okay, I have to go put on a face because I need to go to work. I need to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And even in high school, just hi with the smiles and everything. And I mean, I had a tight knit group. that I still talk with to today. The very few from the RP group that understood at the end what was going on, and they really did support me through it. So cahoots to them. But I would put on a face, and when I got home, I was so exhausted from putting on a smile and interacting with so many people when I just wanted to disappear. It was to the point where nothing mattered. It didn't matter that I had parents. It didn't matter that I had a sister, that I had a house, that I had everything that I could ever want. In the back of my mind is like, well, I'm gonna die one day. Let me just get it over with quick. This is too exhausting. It is way too exhausting to feel. And I never understood that because prior to that, I had an amazing childhood. I have amazing parents. I had an amazing sister, very supportive, even with her going through her stuff. I had no reason to really complain to get to that point.
Hey guys, pausing the podcast here. Hope you guys are enjoying it. If you are, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, leave a review. That would be amazing. But I just want to talk about what I am currently wearing. If you can see me, most likely I'm in audio for you. But if you don't know and you just found me on looking for a podcast, on mentallyabadass.com, we do sell apparel and it's adorable. Y'all should check it out right now. If you can't see me, I am wearing a shirt that says, "All I want this year is sleep." I'm sure you can relate to that. So, want to hop on, let you guys know. Also, we have a newsletter that we'll love you to sign up for so we can stay connected. We send it once a month, so don't worry, we're not going to harass you. And also, don't forget to follow our Instagram account at Mentally a Badass. All right, now back to the show.
So to me, it was frustrating in itself having to feel that and not being able to justify why. Like, where's the why? That was always the biggest thing. But it felt, there was different things going through my mind. There was a lot of ways that I could have just ended it or wanted to end it. And that was a constant struggle. To this day, it's still, even where I am, it still lingers, because that trauma doesn't really go away. You just kind of learn to deal with it and do things to alleviate and to remedy it, as much as you can. But it's not easy. It's not easy.
No, I
It's a
know.
war. It's a fight that nobody really sees. It's a silent fight,
Yeah,
And
yeah, absolutely. Because depression is not really, it could be physical, but I do remember you as always smiling. I do remember that. Um, but I never knew what you were actually going through. And then when I did hear about your first hospitalization, I was like in shock and like very sad about it. And I remember your sister I do remember how upset she was as well. She was devastated. It just hurts. And I think that if you have like history in the family of depression, it sounds like it could be more of like the genes and such if you have that. And
yeah.
when I hear something super crazy, I don't know if this is 100% true. This is kind of something I just learned, I think, from like a holistic psychologist on Instagram. But or yeah, so what I've learned was over time, like our ancestors and such, they've been through like hell, with also mental health not being spoken about and them going through trauma when they don't even realize they're going through trauma. So when you go through trauma, it can have like an imprint on like your genes. So it creates like immense, because depression is reality is an illness. Like it's an abnormal like serotonin in your brain. Trauma can really, it can develop that, right? And so if someone has that and they don't do anything to try to heal from it, like try to heal like their depression, because even though like depression, it's not something they say you can heal, but at least you can heal from the trauma and change your mindset, because our brains, the neuroplasticity and such, like I'm sure you know about that. It's very complicated, and I kind of hope you're understanding what I'm saying. But
No, yes.
if our ancestors didn't do anything to heal, they're gonna pass it down to their offspring.
I
So
completely can see that. Yeah.
exactly. So you may not even have, even though you may not have been through the trauma in your childhood, someone in your line had trauma and didn't
Right.
know that it was trauma and didn't heal from it. That's not their fault. They didn't know. Like I'm learning this like this year and learning a lot. And, so that could have, I mean, I'm not a therapist, of course, or certified or anything like that, but I'm just pretty much just sharing my knowledge of what I've heard. But that could have definitely been a possibility.
A hundred
Um,
percent.
yeah, and then also just it's frustrating to not understand, and then being gaslighted, and then not feeling the support from like your family, and pretty much being told that you have demons, and then you think this, and then you think something's wrong with you, and that's where it leads to what happened with you.
Right.
So that could have definitely been the reason, and then also just hiding your feelings all the time is so it's so like dangerous and damaging because we're all supposed to be feeling every single emotion, and when you're taught to not feel sad, like that could manifest as well into depression, which is something that another reason of this brand is I'm encouraging people to be vulnerable. You know, the more we have these conversations, the more people are going to feel okay, if he's coming on here and talking about what he's going through, it should be okay for me to go and talk about because it's okay. You know, like it's okay to talk about, you know, if we've been have anxiety or depression, because in reality, everyone has at least anxiety. I'm not gonna say everyone has
No.
depression because from what I've learned, not everybody is does have that. At least to my knowledge, we're not gonna assume everybody has it.
Of course.
There's a lot of people in this world, but I feel like anxiety is a fair thing to assume because we're all living in the same world, and this world is crazy. This
And it's
world
getting worse.
is.
It's getting
Oh,
so much
but you
crazy.
know, another thing too, and this is just like a mindset thing. I listen to a lot of personal development. Is now than ever we have a lot more technology and social media, and we have TikTok, and now the algorithms are very interest based. So if you're watching a protest or something, someone died or got shot or whatever, if you
Hmm.
watch that or engage with it, you're going to get more stories of the same thing. So in reality, is it worse, or are we just knowing more about what's going on in the world? When originally, back let's say we're in high school, we didn't have TikTok. We had Instagram, but that was just taking photos and it was just fun. It wasn't sharing news. So when you're a
Hmm.
kid, you're not really watching news, you know, as a teenager as well. Like that stuff bores us. Like why would we watch the news every day? And so right now we are, and also it's more dangerous through social media because it's not regulated as much as it would be like on the news. And it's also just being fed to you because it's you're seeing more stories while on the news they're being more curated. So we're only seeing some stories, like pretty much the most drastic ones, the ones that make it to the media, is what they say. And so I think, and honestly, for some reason on Facebook with my algorithm, it keeps showing me car accidents after car accidents after car accidents. And I think because it's for people who have like, you know, that dash cam. And I guess, I mean, it's my fault that I keep seeing it. I'm not going to blame Facebook. To be honest, it's my fault. I'm going to be accountable because when you watch something from start to finish and you get curious and you hooked onto it, Facebook's going to be like, she likes watching this. Let's give her more videos like this, right? And
Yep.
it's like when you know a crash is about to happen, you're curious to see how the crash is about to happen because our brains our default for our brains is negativity. So, which is also really sucks. Like, why were we born like that, where our brains automatically go to negative? Like, we have to work really hard for us to look at things differently. And
Right.
so naturally, subconsciously, I'm watching these videos and I'm just like, first, I'm curious because every human being is curious. Second, I'm like, oh, how is this car going to crash? Like, so I'm like doing this to myself. And so my point is me constantly watching this. It makes me scared to go on the road. It makes me think like, oh my God, like I'm gonna get into an accident. there's so many, like, everybody's like freaking going batshit crazy, like on the road, and everyone's just like playing Grand Theft Auto or Mario Kart. Like that's what my, like, that's like, consuming this kind of content is giving me this idea and belief that my brain is putting together as a puzzle that everyone's batshit crazy and playing Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah,
Like,
that's pretty, especially in Florida. Especially in Florida. People
oh
cannot
yeah,
drive here. You're
Miami.
questioning your sanity with people that you see here every day. So that in itself is a challenge.
Yeah, and it's. I used to live in Cape Coral the last 2 years. It's a lot worse there. It's
Oh,
way
what,
worse.
really?
Yeah. I've right now I live in Davenport, like, an outskirt of Orlando,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like people are more courteous here. So, like, if I'm struggling to, like, get into a lane or whatever, like, they're so nice,
They'll
And
let
then,
you go. Yeah.
yeah, right. Or if I'm in a situation where I'm like, fuck, like, I'm like a sitting duck, and I'm like, how do I do this road here? Like, which way do I go? And I'm like a sitting duck, and someone behind me can be like beeping at me and be like, come on, go, lady, or something, but they don't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I love you. Thank you. Thank you for not making me cry. I appreciate you. I'm a sensitive human being. Like, but then if you're in Cape Coral, it's like the light turns green.
Yeah. Well, don't even touch Miami. Don't even go to
Oh
Miami.
no,
Miami's like another.
I actually in December got into an accident in Miami. My car got totaled.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like an accident where I like had to go to the hospital. Like, I wasn't hurt physically.
Yeah.
So like when the insurance and the phone like, "Are you hurt?" And I was like, "Well, I'm fine physically." That was my answer.
Physically.
That's all I can. That's
Keyword.
all. I'm like, that is all I can confirm right now. Is yes, physically I'm okay. And they're like,
Yeah.
and they kind of laughed. They're like, "Okay, I get what you're saying." I'm like, "Uh
Yeah.
huh."
Let's go with that. Oh
Yeah. So my car got totaled, and
my
it sucked
gosh.
because I was like almost like paying it. I was almost on paying it off, but whatever, shit happens. And I was like on
Yep.
my way to the ER too.
My gosh. Yeah.
Oh, well, it wasn't like a emergency, like an ambulance kind of thing. It was just I was having like eye problems, and the doctor was at the point where he didn't know what to do anymore. They had to send me to a place that is more knowledgeable and more higher up with that.
Mhm.
And that place, it takes like forever to get into. So they're like, oh, just go to the ER in Miami. It's an eye hospital. Go there. So I was like, okay, I just did what they told me to do. So I drove from
Mhm.
Cape Coral to Miami, and then we got into an accident.
Oh my
And
God.
so I was already like in so much stress, like
Oh.
with going on with my eye. And then I get
Yeah.
into an accident. So I'm like, okay. And this was like a week before Christmas too.
My God. Oh, that's the worst. That's the worst.
It was like, Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. Here you go.
Ho, ho, ho. You got a new car.
Oh
That's
my
the
God.
Santa gave me a new car.
That's pretty much life. That's pretty much what life is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sucked, but whatever. Shit happens, right?
Right.
So, anyway, where was I going with this? I have this bad habit of saying about one thing and then just going completely
Oh, I'm the
somewhere
same way.
else. Yeah.
I'm the
Oh, I
same
was
way.
talking
But it was
about.
just the whole feeling, I guess the whole feeling of how
Oh,
depression
anxiety.
means things to other people and
Uh
how I
huh.
interpreted it versus how other people interpret it, you know.
Right. Yeah, we're talking about anxiety and how the world is crazy.
Oh,
And then
yes.
you said, yeah, this world's getting worse. And then I was talking about mindset. That's what it
Yes.
was.
Yes. There we
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I was just giving you an example. And I just think it would just
Yeah.
be a good uh, topic, tip, whatever, just people who are listening to this podcast. It's true. If you really think about it. Like, the things that's changed is like the media, how media is consumed. But I mean, people are saying, like, if you look at statistics, they're saying that there's less crimes than there were in the past. I've been hearing stuff like that, that the crime has gone down. Well, also serial killer crimes have gone down. I've been
Hmm.
watching a lot of Criminal Minds lately, but it makes sense if you think about it. Like, serial killers, it was easier for them to get off because there wasn't as much technology.
Yes, I agree with that. Less exposure, more ability
Mm-hmm.
to. Yeah, I can definitely see
Absolutely.
that.
So I do have a question. Okay, so let me ask you this question, the one that I didn't know if you wanted to answer it. Okay, do you think struggling with depression makes you vulnerable to being gaslighted, or do you think gaslighting can manifest into depression? But did you already answer that? I think you did.
That was one of those that was kind of like a gray area.
Yeah.
Back then, growing up and not having as much knowledge back then about depression or being a man and having depression, because you have a man with depression, the world flips backwards. How can you be depressed? You must have
Mm-hmm.
done something wrong or something. You could change that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if I would say it's a vulnerability. I feel like at one point I was vulnerable because I didn't understand the feeling, and that made me vulnerable to criticism and not being able to interpret or defend myself to those criticisms. I would say now not so much, because I know where things went wrong. And actually, a psychiatrist had told me, the last one that I saw, was this is all chemical. If there's nothing that happened in your life past, like any trauma in the past or anything like that, you develop an chemical imbalance. When you were talking about ancestry and the genes passing on and having more melatonin than serotonin, so naturally more melatonin, you're more sleepy, you're tired, you just don't want to do much, you're more relaxed in a way, but that affects your brain, it affects your mood and your stability. They pretty much ruled out anything traumatic in the past, and they said that I had a chemical imbalance, which is why I was put on so many different meds, because I felt kind of like they were using me as a guinea pig to kind of see how things would work. To back to the original question, gaslighting to me was more at the beginning stages,
Mm-hmm.
when I didn't know what I had and why I was feeling the way I was feeling. I can tell you that today, at this time, I know where it stems from. I know that it is in chemical imbalance, and you just have to do certain things to make sure that you're not using that as an excuse. People don't understand me. Nobody wants me. You have to kind of just nip it in the butt right there. You have to be like,
Mm-hmm.
to hell with it. I'm in a
Mm-hmm.
different environment. I'm in a different location. I'm surrounding myself in positivity, and I have to do what I have to do. And you have
Mm-hmm.
to live with it, and you have to do things to remedy those feelings, because they're
Mm-hmm.
not real. It's real to you, but at the end it's not real. And that's what you have to
Yeah.
keep in mind, because you thinking something's real can turn bad really quick, because then you start to believe and you start to doubt yourself, and that's never a good thing, you know. Um, Especially the gaslighting portion. I always like to tell people, don't believe what they tell you. Your feelings
Mm-hmm.
are validated and they're real.
Mm-hmm.
But it's what you do about it is what's important at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's definitely all about the education as you're speaking about it now. Because my next question, I think you kind of already answered, is like the best way to respond to gaslighting. But actually, what I want to know is, let's say I'm gaslighting you right now,
Mhm.
and I'm saying something that's fucked up or whatever. How do you recommend someone respond to someone who's gaslighting them in a conversation?
Um, I mean, gaslighting comes in so many forms. At the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
it is psychologically, it's psychologically exhausting to go through.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Mm-hmm.
depending on the situation. If you're already up, on 10, and you're like, oh my God, I'm ready to explode, and I'm trying to explain something to you, and you're like, well, you should have done this or whatever. I know myself that instead of attacking that person, I'm going to walk away, because it's to
Mm-hmm.
the point where you're already so in your mind, it's the end of the world, and somebody's literally saying, no, it's not. It's all in your head. While it may be true, that's gaslight. That's exactly what it is. It's
Yeah, it's not helpful.
you're downgrading how that person's
Dismissing,
feeling.
yeah.
You're dismissing it.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I personally would just walk away.
Makes sense.
Other times I'd be like, obviously, this is not a conversation I can have with you, but thank you
Yeah,
for sharing. There's different ways to go about it, and it
I
depends on the
agree.
person, how they act. Don't obviously attack the person. It's not going to help anything. Might prove that
Yeah,
you're
I was.
actually crazy. Yeah, might land you in other things besides asylum. But
Don't go to their
it's
level.
right, right. Don't stoop to their level, and that's something that I had to learn, and that with family, with friends. Um, that's a very hard lesson to learn. But once you can master that, or you can handle that, whatever you feel, you know how you're going to deal with it. You don't need
Yeah.
validation from somebody else. You know what I mean? Not saying that you
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't receive help
Mm-hmm.
from professionals or something, but if you can't confide in somebody, and that person's not good for you, and they're going to be toxic and just demean you in any way, and that includes the gaslighting, just walk away. You just,
Yeah,
it's not worth it.
exactly. I was just gonna
So,
say to keep your own peace.
yeah, protect your peace at all costs, basically. And that's what I'm doing now. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. We moved down here. I mean, for me, moving to Florida was probably the best thing I could ever do. It kind of saved my life because it took me away from that environment. And not
Mm-hmm.
saying that I don't miss my friend, I miss my friends dearly. The few
Mm-hmm.
that I have left, but it was an environment where I was a lot of that, including family, and I had to do what's best for me. And I felt like it was the best decision to kind of get away from that environment and just be on my own. And I learned so many things about myself being on my own, experiencing new things, learning, even with the pandemic. I mean, that brought my depression up way sky high. But in so, I also knew how to control emotions and do what I had to do to make sure I can save a life or I can do what I need to do to protect myself and keep myself busy, keep myself learning. That's probably what saved my life the most, to be honest with you. Very important to take care of yourself because if you can't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of anybody else, and you're not going to be able to function as you want to in life. That's the most important thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, I feel like you're like the male version of me, but it's more appropriate for me to say I'm the woman version of you because you're older, so you're the original.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah,
Because I
what was
feel
wrong?
like I feel like we literally have the same thought process. I mean, we've been through similar mental health situations. We're both Cuban. Add that in there.
Yep.
We're
Yeah.
both
Yeah.
went to the same high
Disclaimer.
school. Yeah, I know, right? We were both grew up in the same, well, at least high school wise, in the same environment as New Jersey. And I feel like there should be like a club, like the New Jersey people moving to Florida. And I feel like a lot of them
Yeah.
are doing that. I've been
Yeah.
noticing. That's just one person. She was in my grade. She just recently moved, I think, like a month ago or something like that, or 2 months ago. And
Okay.
yeah, I was like, oh, welcome. She's in Orlando, and I asked her why she left New Jersey, and she just said she just wants a slower pace because New Jersey, is very fast paced. And I'm
Yes.
like, yeah, no, that makes sense. I'm just like, I feel like there's people who just get it, and then there's people in New Jersey. It's like, why would you leave? Why would you go to
Yeah.
Florida? Like, we
Yeah.
have a lot of that people who question our choice. Like, oh, why would you leave your whole life here? And then,
Yeah.
your reason is mental health. My reason is mental health. And, I mean, I do have my moments when I struggle with my depression as well, but at least I can struggle by a pool.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. I can go to the beach. Like, I can just look out and see a palm tree, and I'm like, okay, it's not that bad. I had a really
Yeah.
shitty day, but
Mm-hmm.
there's palm trees. So,
Yeah. It's also
it's just a
scientific.
different feel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all
It's
it's
more,
on.
you're getting more serotonin. There's more
Yeah, the
sunlight.
sun. Yes, 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 absolutely. And then just like the vibe here is just different as well, and not having to deal with snow is pretty nice. 'Cause I hated doing that in the
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just overall, like it's just lower cost of living as well. And the
Well, I don't know
well,
about now, but
well
overall
Versus New Jersey is what I mean.
versus New
I'm
Jersey. Yeah.
comparing. Yeah, no, I know inflation's insane. I'm talking just about comparing
Yes. Yes.
to New Jersey is what I meant. Um,
Yes.
Yeah, so I feel like it's just more livable. Of course, everyone's different, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think we got some really good stuff. I think we've had some really good conversation, half mental health, half random stuff, but all overall good conversation. So I'm going to end the podcast episode here. I want to thank you for coming to this podcast. I really appreciate it. And also with all the
Thank you
technical
for having me.
difficulties we were experiencing before. That was
Thank you
fun.
for having me either way.
My cortisol levels were spiking. I was like, I'm kind of glad this is happening with someone I know personally, and not just like a person I'm like, I am so sorry, mess.
Oh my gosh.
So I want to say thank you for that. And okay, so yeah, thanks again, guys, for listening, and stay tuned for our next week's episode.